Welcome to part 2 of the video on hazard identification and risk assessment. This segment will continue discussing the processes and requirements for managing workplace safety. We begin with types of risk assessments. Baseline assessments, as per Section 11.1c, require a company-wide profile of significant hazards. These assessments are snapshots of a company's hazard profile at a specific time and should be periodically reviewed to maintain an accurate priority profile. Next, we have issue-based assessments. These are detailed assessments of elements identified in the baseline profile, as required by Sections 11.2a and b. Examples include failure mode and effects analysis, failure mode and effects criticality analysis, and event tree analysis. Additional risk assessment studies are conducted when circumstances change, often associated with a system for the management of change. This includes introducing new machines, altering work systems, or following an accident or near miss. Assessments are also needed when new knowledge about risks emerges. Continuous assessments, as per Section 11.2, require the employer to monitor hazards and set up a program for ongoing evaluation. Examples include housekeeping, pre-use and pre-work inspections, and planned job observations. The focus here is hazard awareness, not initial identification. General principles of risk assessment emphasize systematically addressing all relevant risks. Focus on major hazards, consider all aspects of work, assess existing controls, and be systematic. Address actual practice, including non-routine operations, and include everyone who could be affected. Further general principles include highlighting individuals or groups particularly at risk. Objectively assess existing safety measures and controls. Ensure the level of detail matches the level of risk. In most cases, start with a rough assessment and become more sophisticated later. Risk assessment analysis involves understanding the hazard, which is the potential for harm, and the risk, which is the likelihood of harm. We also look at the consequences, exposure, and probability of an event. Risk is calculated as consequence multiplied by frequency. Frequency, in turn, is calculated as exposure multiplied by probability. This framework helps quantify and manage risks systematically. A reminder for hazard identification and risk assessment is to keep the process simple and practical. Identify major hazards first and be systematic. Be open and honest, and pay special attention to hard-to-reach areas. The 4 simple steps to hazard identification and risk assessment are: identify hazards, classify hazards using the risk ranking process, determine and take corrective action, and finally, record and report the hazards and corrective actions to your supervisor. Identified hazardous conditions are recorded to meet specified requirements. Reporting hazards is crucial, as failing to do so could result in personal injury. Reports support reviewing safety measures and investigating incidents, amongst other functions. Positive interpersonal interaction is essential for effective teamwork in risk assessment. Ensure participation from as many employees as possible, including contractors and all affected personnel. Never underestimate the contribution of any employee, and always initiate follow-up action. Reports must be completed and submitted according to specified requirements. Written evidence of hazard identification is vital for health and safety, for incident investigation, demonstrating follow-up, and ensuring ongoing compliance to supervisors and inspectors. Follow-up action is initiated and implemented to ensure hazards are removed. Corrective action might be immediate or take a few days. Always keep a copy of the completed hazard identification or risk assessment document and follow-up to ensure the reported issues were addressed. The risk assessment includes the major hazards identified and those that pose serious risks if not properly controlled. If a hazard isn't removed in the stipulated time, report it to your supervisors until it is dealt with. Review existing safety measures and assess who is at significant risk. The continuous risk assessment documentation flow is as follows. Completed documents go to line supervisors. The health and safety officer receives a copy for reports. Information is entered into a record system for analysis and to effect necessary changes to standards and procedures. Identifying the hazard involves 4 key questions. How bad are the hazards and risks? How much do we know about controlling them? Are available ways to control the risk available? And finally, what is the cost compared to the benefit of control? Step 1 of the 10 steps to effective risk assessment is to ensure the risk assessment process is practical and realistic. The process must be achievable within the context of your workplace. Step 2 is to involve as many people as possible in the process. This is especially important for those who are at risk, including their representatives, to ensure comprehensive coverage. Step 3 emphasizes using a systematic approach. This ensures that all hazards and risks are adequately addressed through a structured and methodical process. Step 4 advises focusing on identifying major risks. Do not waste time on minor details that might obscure the overall process. Concentrate on the most significant potential harm. Step 5 involves gathering and analyzing all available information before starting the actual risk assessment. Thorough preparation is key to an effective assessment. Step 6 is straightforward. Start the process by actively identifying the existing hazards in the workplace. This is the foundation of the entire risk assessment. Step 7 requires you to assess the risks that arise from those identified hazards. This assessment must consider the effectiveness of any existing control measures currently in place. Step 8 focuses on what actually occurs and exists in the workplace. Remember to include non-routine operations, as these can often introduce unexpected hazards. Step 9 reminds us to include all employees at risk, including visitors and contractors, in the assessment. A comprehensive assessment covers everyone exposed to the potential dangers. Finally, Step 10. Always record the assessment in writing. Include all assumptions you make and the reasons behind them for clear documentation and accountability. Here is an example of a mini risk assessment document, which illustrates how these steps can be applied practically in a short, focused form. Thank you for completing this video on hazard identification and risk assessment. Please ensure you are fully prepared before attempting to complete the knowledge assignment.